Good evening, everyone, and good evening, everyone online. My name is Jinno, and I'm very happy to be offering some of my thoughts this evening. And good to be together to practice as always. And welcome if you're new or newer to the Village Zendo. Really good to have you with us tonight. So the fall, this transition into the fall. It's been pretty hot, and I've been noticing myself being like, I'm kind of ready for it to be cold, I think. And now we finally get the cold, and this afternoon I was like, I'm kind of cold, I wish it was warmer again. So I'm sorry. But I've been sometimes appreciating this kind of blurring of the line between fall and summer. And one thing about me is I really like tea. Some of you may know that, but I kind of got interested in it when I was younger and sort of studied it and learned about it. And I don't do that so much anymore, but I still really enjoy tea. And the fall is a good time for tea as these cold days come in. And for me, there's nothing better than a cup of tea and weekend morning. It's just perfect. And so there's I get like a paper tea catalog from this one place where I buy tea, and I like to just leaf through it if I have time. But who has time for that? So I knew I had a long subway ride coming up a few weeks back. I knew I was going to be on the subway for like at least an hour and 15 minutes. So I thought, okay, this is a good time to look at my tea catalog. And it really helped the ride go along. And at some point, as I was just reading about the different teas and all this kind of stuff, somewhere in my mind, as the water was boiling, so to speak, I remembered this koan that I really like from the Book of Serenity, case 14. It's called "Attendant Huo Serves Tea." It mentions tea, but it's about some other stuff too. And so I wanted to explore that today. I find it a really moving and, for me, very helpful koan. So it starts with a pointer. And I really enjoy the pointers when they're there. I find them a really nice way to enter into the koan and to sort of, to just sit with what it's introducing us to and pointing at. So the pointer for this case says this: probing pole in hand, shadowing grass around him. Sometimes he wraps a ball of silk in iron. Sometimes he wraps a special stone with silk. To determine the soft by means of the hard is of course right. What about the matter of being weak when meeting strength? So this, especially that line, what about to determine the soft by means of the hard is of course right, but what about the matter of being weak when encountering strength? I find that very moving. Of course, looking around the world, both near and far right now, we see many displays of strength in various forms. And we kind of know what that is and what that looks like and what that does. But what about softness? What about gentleness? What about receptivity? I think that it's also there all the time, but it's not always as loud as the displays of strength. And the first part of the case, I really was sitting with this, wrapping a silk ball in iron, wrapping a stone with silk, this kind of relationship of the hard and soft, and the malleability, like iron, It's not very malleable. How do you wrap a silk ball in that? So this kind of relationship of the hard and the soft. And that maybe if one is wrapped in the other at a certain point, they're sort of indistinguishable. So there's also this interpenetrating quality that I think this pointer is pointing to. So the case itself goes like this. Attendant Huo asked Deshan, "Where have all the sages since antiquity gone?" Deshan said, "What? Huh?" Huo said, "The order was for a flying dragon horse, but a lame tortoise shows up instead." Deshan let it rest. The next day, when Deshan came out of the bath, Huo served him some tea. Deshan patted Huo on the back. Huo said, "The old fellow has finally gotten a glimpse." Again, Deshan let the matter rest. So I really like how this case gives us this gentle response to a forceful expression. It's the style that I personally like and am sort of called to. And I think it's clear that we need a lot more of this in the world right now. Not that we don't need responses, we do need responses. But there's so much aggression in the world, and it's out there, but I think really it starts with us. It starts with me. It starts with being in touch with our own aggression and force and anger, and really working with that when it comes up. I think it's right there as well as out in the world. So I think this case is even more than strength and weakness or strength and gentleness. It's really about responding, how we respond, and skillfulness and sensitivity to the matter at hand and how we respond. So he asks, "Where have all the sages gone?" And I think, one thought is sort of that this could feel like a kind of stock Zen question, like where have all the sages of antiquity gone? Sort of a, could be a stock Zen sort of thing. But I think really it is sort of the question in a way. And it's a question that we're asking all the time. I think we ask it every time we walk through the door, or every time we sign into Zoom, every time we sit down on the cushion. And really, we're asking it all the time. Where are the sages? What is the practice? Who am I? What am I really doing? Am I getting it? Am I not getting it? Am I bringing it into my life right now? So I think this is what Huo is asking. And Deshan responds, "Huh? What?" It's not that he didn't hear it. It is a response, but it's a subtle response. And if we can hear what he's saying, then I think it is a clear response. And so Wansong, the commentator of the Book of Serenity, about that response, he says this: "Deshan hid his body with a reed shade, bringing forth shining eye mirrors. Eye mirrors. Deshan hid his body with a reed shade, bringing forth shining eye mirrors." I think that's such a beautiful line. So I was kind of sitting with that, like, That's great, but what is he saying? You know, I think what he's saying is a reed shade. I think like it was like a window blind that would have been woven from the stems of reeds. I think that's what he's talking about. So if you think about that, you know, it's a natural material hand woven together. And so it's not completely opaque and it's not completely transparent. It kind of filters the light. And maybe there are little gaps where the light comes through and creates this dappling effect. So I think it's saying that Deshan, in giving this response, he partially obscures himself. And in doing so, it allows him to both see Huo and also reflect Huo back to himself. So what is it like for us to partially obscure ourselves in order to see and reveal the light of others and ourselves, and also to reflect that light back? And Huo responds to this by saying, "A lame tortoise." Like sort of, is that all you have? But Deshan, who is a highly respected master at this point of his life, lets it go. So then the next day, Huo serves him some tea, and Deshan responds again by giving him a gentle pat on the shoulder. So he's saying, where are the ancestors? They're right here. They are in you. They are in me. They are us in this very room. And I think Huo gets it. So he says, you know, okay, the old guy's starting to get it a little bit. And Deshan again chooses to let it rest. So I think Deshan makes it look pretty simple in this case. But, you know, I was trying to really connect with this to bring it to life more for myself. And I think, you know, when was the last time that someone or something got you really riled up, got under your skin? It's probably not that hard to remember with, you know, how the world is. It's not that hard for me to remember. Maybe someone else really got under your skin about something. Maybe you got under your own skin about something. And what that feels like when we're really bothered, really agitated. So how do we respond to that? How did you respond to that? How did you respond to yourself or to that person or situation? What was that like for you? I think that's really where we have to go with this case. For me, that's where it is. So as I was, you know, working on the talk and sitting with this case, I was connecting with Deshan, who in Japanese is called Tokusan. And he shows up in a number of really beautiful koans throughout our literature. And something that kept coming up is that when he was younger, he always used to use the stick to teach, you know, striking someone, giving them a blow, which is a technique that, you know, for bringing someone back to the present. They're in their head, they're off somewhere, and the strike is like right here. There was this saying that he had 30 blows if yes, 30 blows if no. It said, you know, if his students moved this way or that way, or they didn't move, he used the stick. And, you know, that is one way of teaching. And I think it is important, that way of of helping ourselves and other people to connect, right? I'm sitting here giving this whole talk about all this stuff, but really, I'm right here. You are right there. We are sitting on the cushion right now. That's where we really are. In addition to all these ideas about what we're doing, they're both there. So I think it is an important technique. And I remember Enkyo Roshi said once that, maybe back in these stories, they talk about striking someone with a stick, but now maybe we can think of moving people with our words, moving people with our actions. And so, then I started getting more intrigued, like this transformation that Deshan had from his youth using the stick to letting it rest when he was older. What was that journey like for him? Because I'm thinking about my own journey with learning how to respond to different circumstances. And so I started tracing his life more throughout the koans, and like I said, there's a number of great stories. And I think to really appreciate Deshan's journey, we have to go back in time a little bit. Back to the first kind of centuries, when the Mahayana was developing these different philosophical schools, kind of developing to understand the early teachings of early Buddhism more deeply and in new ways, and find new ways to understand the essence of the early Buddhist teachings, but in new relationships, in new ways. And there's this amazing philosophical tradition in India that we're the beneficiaries of and carry into our practice. And in that whole landscape of this rich philosophical, debating, commenting tradition, Zen also emerges as another way of understanding the teachings and bringing them into our lives. Yes, the teachings, the texts, the commentaries are so important, but what about experiencing it directly without all of the intellect, without all of the intellectual? What about experiencing it directly, right here, right now? And so that was also a radical development amidst many developments. And many of our Chinese ancestors, were deeply learned and taught the Mahayana Sutras and the early teachings and their philosophies. So Deshan ordained very young, became a monk very young, and it's said that he practiced the teachings of the Vinaya, the ethical and monastic precepts, and that he practiced them deeply, and he was a great scholar of the philosophies of the time. And he studied the Diamond Sutra, one of the Mahayana Sutras, which is a lot about the nature of mind and mind being ungraspable. So he was such a master that people of the time called him Completely Diamond, which I think is a pretty cool nickname. And in our tradition, there's a really great story about him earlier in his life. And it says that, so being a great scholar and master, and hearing about this flourishing Zen school in the south of China, which was beyond the letters and words, he wanted to take a trip down there to challenge the Zen establishment and get the better of them. And during his journeys, one day he saw an old woman on the side of the road selling rice cakes and tea. And so he stopped to refresh himself. And she saw that he was carrying this big bundle with him. She said, he asked to have some tea and cakes. And she said, well, let me ask you, what are you carrying? And I think we have another guest. Thank you. And she said, well, what are you carrying? And he said, I'm carrying all of my notes and commentaries on the Diamond Sutra. And she said, okay, well, I'm going to ask you a question, and if you can answer it, I'm happy to treat you to some cakes and tea. And she said, so the Diamond Sutra says that past mind is ungraspable, present mind is ungraspable, and future mind is ungraspable. So what mind are you going to refresh with these rice cakes and tea? And he was maybe not expecting to hear this from a woman on the side of the road selling rice cakes. And he was taken aback and didn't know what to say. He was lost for words. So the story says that then he said, okay, is there a Zen master anywhere nearby that I can go and learn from? And she sent him to Longtan, Master Longtan, who's known in Japanese as Master Ryutan. And so when he arrived, he challenged him and said, well, I've heard of Ryutan, whose name means Dragon Lake, which was the name of the place where he taught. That's how the teachers got their names. So he said, well, I've heard of Ryutan, but now that I'm here, I don't see a dragon or a lake. And Ryutan kind of pushed back and said, well, you have arrived at Ryutan in person, encouraging him, like, again, maybe let go of some of your ideas about what this is and actually be here. But Deshan was kind of in his head, so he did not get that. And I love that, there's this echo here, as there often are in the koans and the stories, of, this challenge, I don't see a dragon, I don't see a lake, echoes then what Huo says to Deshan later. Says to him, I don't see a flying horse, I just see a lame tortoise. So this kind of the way that we are taught by our teachers and how that can be carried on, both in maybe our missteps, but also in our ability to respond to other people. So after this initial exchange, later they meet in Ryutan's room to study late into the night, studying the teachings. And eventually Ryutan says, well, it's pretty late, you should probably go now. And so Deshan goes out and sees that it's pitch black outside. So he turns back and says, it's dark out, And Ryutan lights a candle for him and is passing the candle to him. And just as he's about to take it, he blows it out and submerges him in darkness. And the story says that Deshan had a deep insight in that moment and got down and bowed. And Ryutan said, why are you bowing? What have you seen? And he said, from now on, I will never doubt the words of any of the Zen teachers. And the story goes that the next day he got up in front of the Sangha and took all of these notes and commentaries on the Diamond Sutra that he was a master of and had been studying for years and years and carrying around with him, and lit them on fire and let them go. So I was also trying to connect with that and make that more real to myself. And I had the image of like walking into my office on Monday morning and picking up my smartphone and my laptop and like saying, no real knowledge can come from these devices, and lighting them on fire. But I mean, trying to really having such a deep experience of something that these things which we rely on so much suddenly become meaningless, and just being able to totally let them go. So after this, Deshan develops this style of, striking, and maybe part of it comes from this blowing out of the candle is a kind of form of striking, helping him strike into that moment. He had spent his whole life in his head with these commentaries, and then, right into the darkness. So he develops this style, and there's several koans that kind of show him using that striking technique. But then as he gets older, he also learns to let it rest. And again, I think it reflects from his teachers. He had this experience with Ryutan being challenged by him and letting it rest. Then he goes to see another teacher and does the same kind of big display and challenges him. And this teacher also kind of lets him do his thing and just lets it rest, even though he could respond differently. So understanding that there is a time for the different responses. It's not one thing, but it's dynamic, our response. And I think it's a good opportunity to sort of ask ourselves, is our practice, is our Zen one thing, or is it dynamic? Do we respond the same way to different circumstances, or are we able to respond differently? Are we able to meet the person right in front of us, meet the moment, the situation, and be open to whatever it's asking from us? So coming back to Huo, he challenges Deshan like Deshan had challenged Ryutan. And now Deshan lets it rest. And when I was thinking about and working on this talk, just feeling into everything that's happening, which of course we're all doing all the time, it feels like sometimes stewing in this soup of suffering. And I think we have to respond. We have to respond to that. We have to engage with it. We are practicing the path of awakening, the bodhisattva way. We do have to respond. We don't have a choice but to respond to all of the suffering that we encounter, both in ourselves and the world. And Shinryu Roshi spoke about this, I thought, very beautifully on the last day of summer session, after we had been practicing in this peaceful environment for a week together. And he said that now we have to go out and respond. And he urged us to really be careful about the things in our mind and habits that we get carried away in, and losing that ability to be in touch with the heart and be present and respond skillfully. So I think the koans are really, for me, about responding to different situations, helping us to learn how to do that skillfully. And each moment is unique. Only we can really know what is right for us. And we don't really have to think about it. We just naturally respond in the way that we know how best. And in the end, Wansong in the commentary, I think, says that sometimes in a way there's no difference between this strength and the gentleness, these responses. He writes, Deshan usually thrashed the wind and beat the rain, hollering at the Buddhas and reviling the patriarchs. Monk Huo's errors filled the sky. Why did Deshan let him go? Because it might seem like that. He sort of just let him off the hook. Song says, "What is hardly realized is that he wrestled down oxen without using a rope, killed people without using a sword. How many has he ever let go?" So I love this idea of wrestling down oxen without even using a rope. And maybe we could think about the other person or the situation is the oxen, or maybe we are the oxen, our mind, our feelings is the oxen. But being able to calm it without even using a rope, touching it without even touching it. And yeah, I just, sitting with this case and the relationship with Deshan has given me a chance to, and I hope will encourage all of us to use his example to allow ourselves to learn and to grow and to change, to be open to different ways to responding to each moment compassionately, and whatever that might look like uniquely for each of us. There are definitely no shortage of opportunities near and far to practice this. So I was going to end with a little verse I had written, but on the subway on the way down here, I saw a poem, the poetry in motion, you know, the poems in the subways. I really love those. And I've seen this poem many times and love it. But the moment that I saw it, I thought, I think this is a really beautiful way of giving an example of what letting it rest might look like out in our world right now. So the poem is called Little Prayer, and it's by the poet Danez Smith. Let ruin end here. Let him find honey where there was once a slaughter. Let him enter the lion's cage and find a field of lilacs. Let this be the healing, and if not, let it be. Thank you.